In this episode, we speak with Brian Beutler, the founder and CEO of Alianza, which delivers the only true cloud-native, carrier-grade communications platform built for service providers. In 2009, after previous years of helping businesses embrace cloud communications, Brian decided to take that same model and help service providers with their next-generation infrastructure. Service providers that are powered by Alianza are growing faster, drastically simplifying their operations, and delivering better customer experiences. Before Alianza, Brian founded GetFon, which was sold to AT&T Alestra in 2008. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow. Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
RJ, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So you are a serial successful entrepreneur. Maybe what we could do to kick off is tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started in the space of communications, in your entrepreneurial journey, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into the current company.
Yeah, good question to start us off. So I guess I'd say I grew up in an entrepreneurial family with a dad who was an entrepreneur that spent a lot of time modeling kind of the entrepreneurial journey for me and helping me figure out how to buy my first bike by picking apricots and peaches from the neighbors who didn't want their fruit and then reselling it on a fruit stand in front of our house and running paper routes and doing odd jobs and trying to figure out how to fulfill my dreams with just ideas and execution. And I loved that kind of as a youngster. And as I got older and went through college and thought about kind of what I envisioned as the normal career path, get a great education, graduate from university, go get a job, work your way up through corporate America, I realized that there was something inside of me that was just like, that's not me. And I want something different. And I loved this idea of creating something from nothing. Mm-hmm. And that was really like how, in some ways, Alianza came to be, is just applying that same methodology in multiple instances, kind of time and time again, and rolling it forward to something new, into something that became far bigger and far greater than I ever envisioned at the outset.
You know, my interpretation of Alianza is that it really enables companies, maybe other parties, to operate more seamlessly and efficiently within the kind of their communications by leveraging the cloud. But there's probably a lot more to it.
Yeah, I would say like how I describe Alianza to people is Alianza is the company that most Americans have used but have never heard of. When you place a phone call or send a text message to a business or do a video conversation, you're probably doing it over a broadband service provider's network that provides access into your home or business. All those customers are prospective Alianza customers, and there's over 125 of those broadband service providers that use Alianza today to power all sorts of real-time communications over their network. Yet you would never know Alianza sits behind their network powering those conversations. It is the brand names like CenturyLink and Lumen that you would know and think about as your communications provider, but they're looking to Alianza to power those solutions on their behalf.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there a counterpart? I guess there's a competitor. If Alianza isn't behind the network facility communications, there's another party doing it.
Yeah, we're not behind all of them yet. But I would say this is like a lot of good entrepreneurial stories. This is a story about an industry in transition and an industry in flux. And communication service providers are one of the most interesting industries for a SaaS and cloud company like Alianza, because communication service providers have been around forever. Like they're some of the oldest companies around, many over a century, right? You know, a lot of these companies, think about AT&T, American Telephone and Telegraph, right? They started doing telegraph services, morphed into voice. And so there's long, deep roots in communications, but many of these companies are running on infrastructure that's 20, 30, in some cases more than 40 years old. And so they've got to figure out, how do we transform this legacy infrastructure that sits in hundreds of data centers across America and across the world? How do we transform that into what's next? How do we deliver customer experiences that are richer, better, at lower cost? And that's where the cloud is kind of, we call it the landing zone for all of these communication services that modernizes the customer experience. We don't support everybody yet, but I think we're definitely on a path to transforming service providers from what I'll call legacy telcos into much more modern network-enabled tech cos. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. And so when you started the company, and this is going back, I think, in like 15, 16 years ago, is that around?
Yeah.
Was the idea the same? Your initial idea then, is it the same as what the company's executing on today?
Yeah, really great question. So no, not at all. I mean, in some ways it's the same. In some ways, there's like every company. I think it's really rare for startups to go from zero to scale to exit and harvest without one or multiple pivots. And Allianz has certainly had pivots along the way, but what is the same is the mission and vision of connecting people. Like we have this underlying purpose of the company that we're striving to make the world a better place by bringing people closer together. And we bring people closer together with new and innovative ways to connect with one another. And we think by doing that, we're in some small way, we're making the world a better place. And so how we do that, although like the how has changed, the what and why have remained relatively consistent throughout our journey.
I'm always curious. We alluded to how your entrepreneurial journey started pretty soon when you were a kid, from the influence of your family. Did you also suspect early on? Did you just have a knack for trying to figure things out, trying to get things started, organizing people? Did that happen early on in your life?
I would say like half and half. I would say on a small scale, yes. And I've always been an introvert. So I don't really gravitate towards like the leadership part, and leading people has been like there's parts of that that are innate and that I really enjoy naturally. But I will tell you, like every month when I stand up in front of our company to do an all hands meeting, my hands still get a little bit clammy. I still get a little bit nervous. The public speaking part of it and sitting on big stages or doing panel discussions is still something that I have to like kind of psych myself up for and be like, all right, you got this, like you can do this, you need to do this. But then there's other areas that I think like solving problems and running towards difficult questions is something that I've always enjoyed. And that part of the business, and I think maybe one of my small superpowers, where some people will see really hard challenges, hard issues, difficult situations, and maybe run from those. I like to run towards those because there's a part of my brain that gets really curious about why certain things exist the way they are, why status quos exist, why people make certain buying decisions the way they do. And I love the intellectual pursuit of trying to crack the code on number one, why things are the way they are, and two, could they be done better?
Hmm. Speaking about like entrepreneurs and their personalities, we had someone on, he was the founder of Bevy, and he was like just explaining how interesting it was to him that these very successful entrepreneurs have very different personality types. And you could have the gregarious type, the charismatic leader. You could also have the more reserved and almost shy
Yeah.
leader. Have you found the same in your just talking to various business folks and entrepreneurs?
100%. Like I run in, of course, like as you would imagine, entrepreneurial circles and different venture funds do their venture conferences. And you kind of get to know other CEOs of other companies. And it's so interesting to me that there is no one archetype of great CEO, great founder. It is like taking a complete cross section of society in general, sticking them all in the same room and saying, hey, well, the one thing that they share in common is that they saw a vision for solving a problem in a unique way that somebody else didn't. And they had the drive and I'll call it maybe the audacity to think that they could be the ones to help solve it.
Hmm.
And that common thread across all different personality types, backgrounds, gender identity, religion, socioeconomic status. I would say like the one common thread for me is just a desire to win, to make an impact, and to solve a problem in a unique way. And maybe there's a little bit of like chart your own course in there too. Most entrepreneurs are most comfortable with their hands on the steering wheel as opposed to riding shotgun.
And the other key element of being successful in that journey is being able to bring people into the company, talented people, and retain them and set up a good culture. When you interview folks, are there specific traits you're looking for?
There's multiple, I'll call it axes or vectors on which I like to analyze executives, especially members of my leadership team, but I would say like people at large. Like, and where I start is we call it the airport test. Like if I was flying with this person to visit a customer and on the way back, our flight got delayed by 4 hours or canceled and we had to like spend the night in the airport, how would I feel about spending the night with this person? Do I like them? Are they different enough from me to bring unique ideas and challenge me intellectually while also working in a way that represents the values that define Alianza? Right. And what I mean by that is there are certain ways different people like to work. At Allianz, I'll give you a couple examples. Like, I'm really big on openness, transparency, care and candor, really big on optimizing for the customer experience, which requires a high level of EQ, kind of that emotional quotient, like being able to put yourself in a customer's shoes and view a challenge or a problem through their lens rather than from your perspective. Those are just a couple examples. But to get people that will lean into your values and like working like you work is a big deal for me. And then, of course, competency, right? And merit. Like, do they have the skills necessary to do the job, to uplift the company? And I'll tell you, like, sometimes that means that they have been there, done that. And other times it is like, this person is an absolute diamond in the rough. They may not have done this before, but they can absolutely do this. And I will tell you, RJ, like, even as much emphasis as I put on like building the right team, getting the right folks on the bus, there's still times when we get it wrong. And in those moments, like, we try to course correct, make quick changes, even the hard changes, to make sure that we're doing right by the company, by our customers, to have the right people kind of in the organization to execute and deliver the results our customers expect from us.
Mm-hmm. And I think I saw something in your background about being, somewhat impatient. And I think it's a common thing, for entrepreneurs that want to get things done, is that there is this level of urgency. Is that something like you screen for, meaning like when you're hiring, are they action oriented?
I love that. I love the kind of a bias towards action versus analysis. Like, I've always kind of been like, don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. Like, we can kind of analyze things and build PowerPoint decks and build Excel spreadsheets, which are a personal favorite of mine. But at the end of the day, nothing drives progress like action. Try it, see the results, adjust, keep iterating, iterate quickly. And so we like people that will, I'll say, operate on this continuum of, if it's a really, really important challenge and the stakes are really high, let's do the analysis, let's dig in, let's debate it really hard, let's argue it out. But also, like, if the stakes are relatively low, let's just go fast, trust your gut, and let's go. And if we make a mistake, that's okay. We'll adjust and we'll rechoose. And I think that's a really important, like, kind of cultural characteristic, is having that kind of emotional safety that allows people to know that if they make mistakes, like, that's okay. It's a learning experience, but we're going to learn quickly, pivot quickly, adjust quickly, and be better. But we're not going to let our mistakes define us nearly as much as like the learning we have, how fast we pivot, recover, and get it right.
What types of objectives drive your company? Are you aiming towards revenue objectives in year 1, 2, 3, 5? Are you aiming for, maybe something more qualitative? What is driving the whole organization, like, day by day?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So we operate with a very well established and tenured strategic framework that we use. And that framework starts with the belief that we have an opportunity to change an industry. Like, for us, this has never been about creating specific financial goals, financial outcomes, exit amounts, or exit multiples for investors, as much as it has been around, let's go transform an industry and let's create a company that's not a good company, but a great company, a company that can last the test of time because it's doing meaningful things at scale. And we look at strategic planning as really what we need to do to capture an entire market, knowing that the financial results are an outcome of that. They're a lagging indicator of success, right? And I think too often entrepreneurs and startups make this mistake of circling a revenue number or sales number or a bookings number and saying, this is our measurement of success. When actually, like, that's success looking in the rearview mirror. Like, those are results of everything you've done to build to that point. And a lot of entrepreneurs, another common characteristic is, we're data driven. We like seeing the results. We love to win. Like, we want to win at the end of the day. Like, that gets us excited and gets us going. But sometimes the hard work, especially at a company like Alianza, where sales cycles are extremely long and the time between action and outcome can be measured in years, it's difficult to be patient and wait for those results to come. And sometimes that requires really strong fortitude and really, I'll call it, like, stubborn belief in yourself, in the company, in the team you've built, in the strategy you have, knowing that the results, if you're doing the right things, you have the right strategy, the results will follow.
Now, and when you think about your team, this team that you're willing to be very patient with, if you're not seeing the revenue, is that like a 3-person, 4 or 5-person core team that kind of you've been with for years?
Yeah, for me, it's like 6 to 8 people that are kind of my core executive leadership team and great tenure on this team. I mean, I got people on this team that have been with us for over a decade and people on this team that have been here since day one. They were kind of small group of people. And as valuable as those people are, then there's new people that come in and join the team at a point in time. I mean, we just hired a new executive to run all of customer success and sales for us. And he's been on less than 6 months and complete breath of fresh air because he brings new ideas and new perspectives. And sometimes you've been around a company too long, you start to develop what we call a curse of knowledge, where you don't see things the same way. And to have people come in and now challenge you is really healthy. And that's another one of like the great cultural elements that we try to really, I'll say, magnify at Alianza is a willingness to challenge and an openness to be challenged by others, to check ourselves, right? And I like to talk about we should all have strong opinions, loosely held. Let's come in hot with a belief and a perspective. But if somebody brings us data, brings us perspective that's different than ours, when presented a better position, we should be willing to give up our prior position in a heartbeat. No ego, lots of humility.
And as you've spent your years now leading your prior company, now this company, when you think about this team and how you interact with them, does it come naturally to you to know how to like motivate or communicate effectively with each team member? Because I presume it's different for the way you communicate with each person is maybe different. I don't know.
Yeah, totally. Like there are people on my team that I have scheduled, structured one-on-ones with every week. And there are others that I haven't had a structured one-on-one with in years because we just know each other so well. We can complete each other's sentences. And both of those have merit, right? And it just depends on what's the nature of the individual relationship. Like there are areas of the business where I love systems and processes, especially in technology and operations, and especially in a business like ours where we're running services that 911 and emergency services centers rely on, that hospitals run on. Like we have to be perfect in how we execute the platform. And that requires a tremendous amount of rigor on process. But when it comes to people management, I like to be a lot more fluid and open. I don't remember which personality test it was that we all took as an executive team. And then there's a scatter plot that kind of shows where you are. I think it's the DISC profile. And then we scatter plot where each of us landed. And it was so interesting to me that we were literally as far apart and like diverse as you could possibly get in personality types. We have like the Eeyore on the team, and then we have the optimist on the team. We have the analytical team members. And what that creates it was really interesting to me because some of these folks I've been working with for years, and you would expect that we would kind of, after a decade or more of working together, we would kind of start to work the same way. But personality types exist independent of career and profession and company that you're working for. And that brings a lot of diversity in how people look at challenges and opportunities. And I love that, like thinking about diversity, not just through kind of some of the traditional lenses we talk about, but also through like personality types, background types, to just bring those perspectives that you need to really run a business effectively.
I'm curious, do you have a chief of staff? Just curious what your thoughts are on that role.
Yeah, so it's something I'm trying to grow into. So I don't have a formal chief of staff. I do have kind of an executive assistant that is becoming tremendously helpful to me in kind of managing my time and especially managing my calendar as the company gets bigger. Kind of we're just crossing over kind of, I think, 300 team members now at Alianza. So trying to prioritize my time as effectively as possible is something that I am very open to having help with now. And that seems to be something that I'm also learning and getting better at, right? Because like you would think like having an EA or chief of staff come in and really help organize your team is something that could add immediate results, but it requires just as much learning, I think, on my part on how to engage with her than it does from her kind of growing into this position as well, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Another thing, like I guess sidetrack, I noticed one of the big things that you are interested in, focused in is community. Can you tell us in what ways you try to kind of cultivate community?
Yeah, happy to. I think in some ways, like my community outreach is just another extension of trying to connect with people and kind of a deep desire to help other people in moments of need. So one of the things that I do, and probably like the biggest thing I do outside of work, is I'm a member of the Utah County Search and Rescue Team. And what we do is essentially, you're familiar with Utah County, we sit just the kind of central Wasatch, south of Salt Lake City, surrounded by snow-covered peaks on one side, rivers, mountain streams, and then on the other side, we have a big lake called Utah Lake, and we have a number of kind of some desert on the west side of that. And so it's a very big recreational area, and along with kind of what I'll call like mountain recreation and outdoor rec comes risk. And when people get into environments outside of the, I'll call it city limits, and they get into trouble, they call search and rescue. And it's a team of about 55 or 60 individuals, 100% volunteer, nobody gets paid. And when somebody needs help, we show up and we do steep angle rescue on the sides of cliffs. We do avalanche work. We do searches when somebody goes missing. We do backcountry rescue, broken legs, concussions, all the way down to like a twisted ankle and somebody can't walk out on their own power. And it's a really both, once again, an intellectual exercise for me, the learning and working with a team, understanding kind of how a really high functioning team works in critical environments is something I really enjoy about it. But at its heart, I just love showing up when somebody needs help. It's a really unique way to be able to see other fellow humans in moments of deep need and crisis. And in many instances, the worst day they've ever had in their life. And to be able to show up and be there for them and share that with them is really special and really unique. And I consider it a blessing and just a privilege to be able to be part of this team.
Fantastic. Last 2 vacations I went on each one of them, I witnessed a helicopter rescue. One was on a ski slope, and then the other one was in the middle of summer hiking. Someone had broken their ankle. Switching gears, we're heading into the tail end of the conversation. 2 last questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
I'll go back to kind of maybe we started. My father, right? More so than anybody else in my life. Not like necessarily different from, I think, many people that would talk about the impact of a parent. But for me, it's just nobody's had a bigger impact on me than my dad. My dad's somebody that's kind of modeled the entrepreneurial journey for me through thick and thin, probably more thin than thick, if that makes sense. Showed a lot of grit. He's an Idaho farm boy, kind of grew up in big family on a potato and sugar beet farm in Idaho, and knows how to work, knows what grit means, knows that you tell me all the time, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And I think I've carried a lot of who I am and how I show up at Alianza and in my life and my family today because of the lessons my dad taught me when I was a youngster.
Last question. I think we may have already answered this, but a charity cause or other endeavor that you're passionate about.
Yeah. Okay. This one, I'll give a shout out to my wife and my kids who are big into helping water for South Sudan. So my daughter just turned 15, and 5 years ago, she would have been 10 years old, read a book called Long Walk to Water. It's a book about the South Sudanese war and young girls that were essentially taken out of education and now had to start walking for water amidst a civil war. And it's both heartbreaking and inspiring. And at the end of reading that book, I remember I closed, like reading it with her on her bed at night, closed the last chapter of the book. And she looked up at me and said, like, Dad, can we help? Like, what could we do? Like, because the author of the book ended up going on to found a foundation to bring fresh water and clean water to small rural communities in South Sudan. And my daughter said, like, let's go find out more. And so at the prodding of my daughter, my wife got involved. We, as a family, we kind of got involved. We built through, I guess, trying to pass on a little bit of this entrepreneurial journey in a little bit different way with my kids. Kind of found out what a water well costs to build. I think it's around $20,000, including like some maintenance and some setup, depending on the location. So we got to work and said, kids, how do you want to do this? Mom and dad will help match what you guys can raise. And they sold vegetables and grew pumpkins and sold farm fresh eggs and cut flowers and would do like bigger and better trades around the neighborhood and did all sorts of things and ended up raising enough money after, I think, a year and a half of fundraising as a family. We built our first well, and now we've done 3 wells. And now we're kind of addicted to it and love this group, Water for South Sudan, and the pictures they send us of the impact that something as simple as a fresh water well in the middle of a rural community can have. Because when a well goes in, the girls can now go to school. Mm-hmm. And when the well goes in, the community now gravitates towards this area and commerce happens. And now when there's a gathering of people, there's help available for those that are struggling. And there's this whole cycle that they get in now where these girls that are now educated can now contribute where before they couldn't. And it's been really gratifying. And you see these pictures of communities and the gratitude in their eyes of what something as simple as fresh water means to them. And it becomes a little bit addicting.
That's phenomenal. Is there a website that we can point people to?
Yeah, I'll give it to you really quick. I think it's waterforsouthsudan.org.
Excellent. We'll include the link on our posts.
Love it if you put a link up there. It's a fantastic organization.
Excellent. We'd love to. Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you for having me. Totally appreciate it. Take care.